Hey everybody, welcome to my series outline for the Pokemon Generation 1 Trainer Class Challenge. I'm going to be doing a quick overview of what this series is, what the rules are, and the current episode release plan. Now, what is the Trainer Class Challenge? For this series, I'm going to be emulating the various trainer classes in Pokemon Generation 1, attempting a playthrough as each trainer class. There are 27 trainer classes that I will be playing through the game as. These trainer classes are the various non-special trainers that the player battles against as they play through the game. Bug catchers, junior trainers, hikers, and such. Posting one video per class. Now, what are the rules? Rule number 1. No items during battle. Using items in a game like Pokemon Generation 1 just make the game much too easy. The whole purpose of a challenge is to add some level of challenge to the game. Items take that away. I will not be allowed to use items during battle. Rule number 2. No excessive grinding. A low level is not an obligation, but a high level is frowned upon. Again, we're not looking to make the game any easier by just tackling problems by leveling up. Rule number 3. I am only allowed to use Pokemon that a given trainer class uses at some point in the game. I combed through a list of every single Pokemon that every trainer that you battle offers and used that to compile these groupings based off trainer class, and I only have access to those Pokemon. Rule number 4. All Pokemon will receive names. Naming things is hard, like it or not. It's just a fact of life. Every Pokemon will get a nickname. No generics here. If I miss one, as soon as I get to Lavender, I have to give it a nickname. Rule number 5. I must take a standard starter if possible. Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur. If none are available, I will build a new version of Red that uses a reasonable starter Pokemon. I'm not permitted to choose an overpowered Pokemon as my starter, but I'm also not obligated to choose the weakest possible starter from my available choices. As an example, playing through as Beauty, she has access to Bulbasaur, so I chose Bulbasaur as my starter. I'm not allowed to edit in something else that may have been more beneficial to me. Scientist, however, that I did the playthrough for, does not have access to any of the 3 starter Pokemon. I made a custom build of the game that offered Grimer as a starter to do my Scientist playthrough. I also happened to edit in a Magnemite encounter to the forest, as most of the Pokemon available to Scientist weren't available till very late in the game, and sticking with only one, I would have ended up with an over-leveled Grimer, basically, making things much too easy, so adding in the Magnemite pretty early helped spread that experience out and keep levels reduced to a lower rate. It also happens to be a Pokemon that is weak against Brock, so I definitely wasn't making it easier, and it does not learn any electric type moves until very late in the game, so it wasn't a big help against Misty either. It really was just there to help keep levels down. Rule number 6. I may not evolve a Pokemon if that given evolution is not used by any of the given trainers in that class in the game. As an example, again, with Beauty, she has access to Bulbasaur and Ivysaur, but not Venusaur. During my playthrough as Beauty, I was not permitted to evolve my Ivysaur into a Venusaur. It had to stay as Ivysaur. Rule 7. I am allowed to use pre-evolutions for available evolved forms, but I must evolve them at a reasonable point. Using Beauty as my example still, sorry, she was the first class I played through, so she has a lot of examples. Pidgey wasn't technically available to her, but Pidgeotto was. With that in mind, I did catch a Pidgey pretty much right at the start of the game, but I evolved it as soon as possible. I didn't allow myself to keep it as a Pidgey to my advantage had that been an option. It must have evolved as soon as possible. There's a little bit of a gray area with the Evolution Stone Pokemon in that, but I'm more or less just going with my judgment. Evolve it as soon as I reasonably can. Rule number 8. I am permitted to have duplicates in my party if the given trainer class uses duplicates in-game. I may not exceed the number of duplicates used in-game by that given trainer class, though. As an example, Bug Catcher can commonly be seen using multiple Caterpie in his party. I may use up to 2 Caterpie should I choose when I do a Bug Catcher run, but I'm not going to use 3 or more. 3 or more just gets excessive, but 2 is very reasonable should I find the need to have 2 Caterpie in my party. Rule number 9. I am permitted to catch Pokemon outside of the trainer class list only for the purposes of fulfilling HM requirements. If any of my available Pokemon can use the necessary HM, I am obligated to use that Pokemon instead. Example: Scientist does not have access to a Pokemon that can cut. I was permitted to catch a Pokemon for the purposes of using cut. That Pokemon, however, was not permitted to participate in battle or be used for any purpose other than its HM. Oddish will be my default Pokemon for cut because it's easily obtainable and catchable right there where you get cut. And Lapras will be used as the default for Surf and Strength if neither are usable by my party. Rule 10. I may not use Fly or Flash if I do not have access to an appropriate Pokemon for it. Unlike Cut, Surf, and Strength, they are not obligated to beat the game. If I do not have a Pokemon that can't fly, then I don't get Fly. If I don't have a Pokemon that can Flash, I don't get Flash. Rule number 11. If a viewer catches me breaking a rule, feel free to call me out on it. I will produce a rerun of Shame wherein I replay that trainer challenge with an additional rule of the viewer's choosing applied on top of that. A special note on this one: at the time of establishing this rule, I have broken it one time. In my Scientist playthrough, during my Elite playthrough, Elite 4 challenge, I kind of got stuck at Agatha where I just didn't have damage output to get by her. I quickly caught a Pokemon that could fly, made my way out to the power plant, got the Thunder TM, taught it to one of my Pokemon, went back, retook on the Elite Four. That episode is already done and ready. I'm not going to re-record that. It is of the guilt of doing that I've decided to establish this going forward. So realistically, as Season 1, all the playthroughs are done, all the videos are in editing. That's more a Season 2 and on rule. If you catch me breaking a rule, I will re-record a run of Shame and post that alongside the original post. So feel free to do so. Finally, series structure. I'm breaking the 27 trainer classes plus a handful of other videos down into 4 seasons. Season 1 is the only one that's really kind of set in stone right now. I'll be doing Beauty, Black Belt, Channeler, Juggler, Scientist, and Youngster. Episode 1 is obviously this intro, and the final episode of Season 1 will be a Season 1 retrospective, where I build a tier list of all of the runs I've completed so far, based off the opinions I form of them as we go, and then talk a little bit about maybe some of the lessons that I learned along the way. For Seasons 2, 3, and 4, this is my planned outline for those. It is subject to change. None of these runs have been even started yet. And so obviously I have a long way to go. If there's some reason why I need to delay one, I might pull one up from lower than it. But for the most part, this is the outline I plan to stick to. Not necessarily in these orders. The ordering of the episodes is more going to be based off when the editing is complete. So these are kind of, for the most part, I think especially for Season 1, they're alphabetically ordered, not necessarily episode ordering. In all of the season retros, however, I am leaving myself open to editing the previous tier list. If by the time I get to the end of Season 2 or Season 3 or Season 4, and I determine that I incorrectly tiered a trainer class before that, I will do those modifications first. There's nothing wrong with learning something new and maybe going back and saying, hey, I was wrong here. I have to change this. I have to update this. Maybe this person was better than I expected them to be because I chose not to use this Pokemon that they had access to that was really good. Or maybe I've just been over or underestimating some of the early trainers that I'll find out and learn more as I go. So each of these retros will not only place each of their respective trainer classes, but they will also be validating all the ones that came before it to work towards one final tier list for all of these classes where I rank all of these trainer classes against each other and see where they stand. Hopefully, when we get to the end, maybe we'll come up with some sort of special episode we can do at the end. Maybe where I pick out and do some sort of alternate party challenges for some of these. If you guys don't like the parties that I chose to go with, then we can certainly revisit some things and use that if we think it will change the tier list. Uh, with that, I'm really excited to get this going. So let's play some Pokemon.